everyone, and welcome to another edition of the vAuto podcast. I'm Lance Helgeson with vAuto. I'll be your host for today's episode. I'm excited for today's conversation and our guest, Tim Hlavenka, who's the National Sales Director for Rick Case Automotive Group based in Florida. Now, Tim joined the Rick Case organization about a year ago, and he's helped the organization put a greater emphasis on used vehicle sales, operations, and performance, while maintaining the group's record-setting reputation as new vehicle retailers. Part of the story on the used side is about the group's adoption of the new variable management strategy for used vehicles, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Meantime, Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here today.
Awesome, and thanks for taking time for us. Now, let's get everybody on the map with you, Tim. Tell me a little bit about your car business career, your current role and responsibility in that national sales director position, and how you got there.
Yeah, very, very simple. So started my car career in 2002 selling cars like most of us did on the variable side of this business. Fortunately, I was able to move up really, really quickly. I only sold cars for 9 months before graduating into a management position, starting with F&I. Did that for a little over a year and then quickly moved into sales management, eventually a general sales manager, general manager, and now into a national director's role. I think part of that was because I did have a lot of management experience prior to joining the automotive industry. I spent 10 years in the restaurant hospitality industry, and 7 of those were in management. So I think that kind of helped me accelerate my path into management with the auto industry. So that's how I got to where I'm at now. Joining the Rick Case Group, I had met the COO of our company, Mark Riley, about 8 years ago on a dealer trip. And Mark and I hit it off. Our wives hit it off on the trip. So we kind of, formed this friendship. And through that, we stayed in constant communication over those 8 years, really talking about the business, what I'm seeing, what he's seeing, picking each other's brains, best practices, vendors that we may use, or new solutions and products. And really talked a lot about our organizations. Mark has great leadership. He has great knowledge of used cars, OEM relations, and my forte was more of the used car side. I was always a numbers guy, and used cars, especially with inventory, acquisition, procurement, and disposition, numbers really helps there. So I was probably a better of a used car guy than Mark was. So he'd always pick my brain on used. I'd pick his brain on new a little bit. So Mark presented this opportunity to me, and I asked him point blank, I'm like, or told him point blank, I'm going to have a big focus on used cars, knowing your organization and the huge focus they had on new, that there was an opportunity to really increase used cars. It was the low-hanging fruit for the group.
Gotcha.
And Mark was on board. He knew there was an opportunity there. The company always had their primary focus on new. Not that they do a poor job with pre-owned vehicles. They do a really good job. But they do a tremendous job with new cars. And I'll go into that real quickly right after this, because we do have some really high-performing new car stores. But he knew there was the opportunity for used car growth. So when I interviewed with Rita, it was a focal point of our conversation. She had brought it up. Mark obviously would, expressed his want for me to focus on used cars a little more than the company has. So Rita had concerns and thought that, the focus on used cars may take away from new car volume. And I simply told Rita that in my experience, it's actually the contrary. The more used cars you sell, the more new cars you're going to sell. It's a natural progression. We know that CPO buyers, a large percentage of them, their very next car is a new car of that same brand. But bringing in a used car buyer, you're bringing in people who may have never visited your website before, your store before. You're bringing in customers that you normally wouldn't have. So you can turn those used car buyers into new car buyers, or at the very least, give them a great experience, and maybe the next new car they buy, they're going to give you that opportunity. But what it also does is it grows your database. It grows your service lane. So if you have a service lane selling team, a vehicle exchange department, which our organization does, and we do a very good job of it. We have great processes, great people in there. We pull a lot of people out of their leases early through the service lane. Getting more used cars on the road really builds that business as well and gives you more opportunities. So, when I explained that to Rita, her eyes lit up. She was excited. She was in. So let's do it. Let's get this used car operation humming and going. So, just real quick to speak on our new car business, if people are not familiar with our organization, we are a 12 location group, although 18 franchises. We got a few franchises together under one roof. 7 of those locations in South Florida, 5 in the greater Atlanta area.
Okay.
But, don't let our small, 12 location groups fool you. We are high volume. I mean, high volume at the highest levels in a lot of our stores. Our Honda store currently #1 in the country for new car sales. Our Volkswagen store #1 in the country for the last, 6 or 7 years, as well as #1 in CPO volume for Volkswagen in the country. 2 of our Hyundai stores finished #2 and 3 in the country last year. We have a Kia store finished #9 in the country last year. So we have some pretty high volume stores for our group. Last year, I think we retailed just over 45,000 units out of those 12 locations. So
wow.
We're big
Yep.
volume, which is great. So there's a lot of opportunity for used cars.
Where would you put the ratio of used to new?
I knew you were going to ask that question, so I was prepared for the answer.
Good.
So, prior to me joining, because we have seen some good used car growth, which we can get into. Prior to me joining, they're about 2/3 new and 1/3 used.
Okay.
So 67% of their volume was new cars and 33% was used cars. That's changing a little bit. The good news is, when I say a little bit, that's good, because with the increase in used that we've seen, we're also still seeing an increase in new cars too. So the ratio isn't really catching up as much as I'd like, but I'm seeing growth in used cars right now, which is something we really like. And we're seeing some good movement in new cars with most of the brands. There's some brands that are down this year.
Yeah.
But you could say that they had good years last year, because there were still some OEMs who struggled with inventory for at least the first half of the year. Toyota, Honda, to be specific.
Yep.
So we saw some of our other import brands grow a little bit last year because of that. And then this year, now that Honda and Toyota have some inventory, we're starting to see that level off or even decline a little bit. But the stores are still performing very, very well.
Now, Tim, I'm curious. So where did you start to seize the used vehicle opportunity? I sort of think of, acquisition, appraising, and pricing as being kind of the big 3 drivers of outcomes. There's a lot of things that go on, but were either of those areas where you started focusing first? And
2 areas. Most stores, and through my experience in this industry, right, one of the toughest things is procurement, acquiring cars, and acquiring for the right money. Because we have such high volume stores, we do not struggle acquiring cars. And because they're, 2/3 new to 1/3 used, we generally take in a lot more than we need. Okay. And initially when I joined, here was the other opportunity that I saw. We wholesaled a lot of vehicles. And when I say wholesaled, I'm not talking your 10, 12, 15-year-old, 200,000 mile cars. I'm talking 2, 3, 4-year-old under 50,000 miles. These guys are wholesaling them, and it was mind-boggling to me initially. I just got into the company. I'm just looking at reports and numbers. I'm not really diving in with the stores themselves. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe they're wholesaling so many cars.
Yeah.
Right. But then when I start peeling back the onion, as they say, I'm noticing, let's take the Honda store, for example. Lately they're on fire. I mean, they're retailing between 700 and 800 cars every month. New cars.
Yep.
Right. But when I first joined, it was more 500, 600, and they were selling about 225 used. So coming my background, I worked for Lithia for 10 years. Lithia always wanted to be 1-to-1 new to used ratio.
Yep.
I understand in higher volume new car stores, that's tough, because your high volume new car stores are usually in metro areas. With the amount of dealers there are, not just franchise dealer, but the independents as well, it'd be really hard for my Honda store to sell 700 used cars along with those 700 new. Is it possible? It certainly is possible, but it's really difficult. It's hard to do. So when I peeled back the onion a little bit, I saw a lot of stores, Honda takes 300-400 trades in a month. Couple that with lease returns, another few hundred lease returns a month. their opportunities to procure cars are right there at their doorstep.
I see.
And we know you can't stock 400 when you're only selling 200. So they do have to, they do at this point, until they continue to grow their used cars, which they are, they do have to wholesale some cars.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we had a lot of stores that didn't have to wholesale as many as they were. And I had a store. So what I like to do when I have people that I have a group of stores, and I was a director for Lithia as well, a variable ops director for a short period. It wasn't too long. But I realized when you have a group of stores, you're going to have some that adopt to things quickly, some that it's going to take a little while, and some that are just going to push back altogether. So I try to find the ones that want to adopt it, that are bought in right from the get-go. They want to give it a shot. And I focus on working with them. And then I kind of use them as a case study, to present to all of the other stores. So I found one store who, did one of our Hyundai stores, great volume, $350 a month on average new, but only about 100 used, some months 80, good months 110.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that there was an opportunity there. I really, really did. So I had a conversation with the general manager and I said, talk to me. Tell me why you're wholesaling these cars. Well, I'm stepping up on trades a lot. And I just kind of figure at this point, I own them for a little too high. I just want to get out of them really, really quickly. I said, okay, I can understand that. You don't want to lose money on the retailing the used car. I said, but let me ask you a question. I said, did you ever consider keeping these cars and just pricing them for a wholesale price to a retail customer? Because you're getting a wholesale value for them now. If you want to sell it and sell it quick, leave it at that wholesale price, sell it to a retail customer, right? It's no different whether you get it from a wholesale guy or a retail customer, other than what does the retail customer do? Well, it gives me a dealer fee, right? It gives me an opportunity for back end.
Yep.
It grows my database. Gives me that customer back in my service department. I mean, there's a lot of things that selling a used car retail gives you that selling a used car wholesale does not. So he says, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. And the very next month he did that, and he sold 135 used cars. Best month he's had in a long, long time, or at least since he's been there. I don't know the true history of that store to know if they've ever done more than that. But currently he's up to, on average, 155 used cars a month.
That's a great story.
Absolutely. So now I had a case study to present to a lot of our stores, and we started seeing a lot more of our stores keep some more cars. It naturally progresses them to sell more used when you stock more. But again, you got to be careful, right? We don't want to overstock our stores.
That's right.
We also had a need in Georgia. So our Georgia stores, although in their market, they're leaders as far as sales volume goes within their market, they're not as high volume as our Florida stores are. So they don't get as many trades. They don't get as many lease returns. In fact, they get very few lease returns because the Georgia market doesn't lease very well.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on that. I understand why the history in Georgia, they don't lease a lot. There was a double tax that Georgia had. That has gone away over the last year or two, I'm hearing. I think that's when they got away. So, it's more going to be now an education to the consumer of what leasing is again, that the taxes are different. But it just wasn't financially worth it for consumers in the past to lease cars in Georgia because the finance payment was about the same amount. So no lease returns really in Georgia. The volume, although good for their market, wasn't enough to really. So Georgia is 1-to-1. And some stores are selling more used than new cars, but they're pretty much 1-to-1 on the new to used ratio in most of our stores. And they wanted to grow. So what we did now is we have an internal process to move some of that wholesale merchandise to Georgia. It's foolish for our stores in Georgia to go out to the auction and pay what you got to pay at the auction, plus the fees, plus shipping, or go to rental car companies. You never buy a good car in a rental car company and you don't pay the right money for it. So we looked at each other and said, what are we doing here? We can't feed our competitors here in Florida with our used cars. Let's at least send them to our Georgia stores. So we developed a process for that now too.
Tell me a little. That's an interesting point because I think other groups are probably more interested in that sort of thing now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
How do you determine if those vehicles in Florida that are right for which store in Georgia? What's the data set?
Yeah. So we let the stores determine it themselves.
Okay.
So they know their markets. They know their market better than I do. I live in South Florida. I do visit Georgia at least once a month for 3-4 days, sometimes twice a month. But I don't know this market as well as they do. So we basically have it's basically like call it an online internal private marketplace where they They can pick and choose what cars they want. Now, we as the executive team of the company, we determine the price of the car. We are not letting the selling store determine the price, because they're going to want all the money.
Right.
And the Georgia stores aren't going to want to pay it. And next thing you know, we're not getting the cars back and forth. So we determine, what a true wholesale value is, right? We look at all the reports. We got them. Cox gives them to us. You got the Manheim reports in vAuto. You can figure out what a car is going to be on the wholesale market, at least within a few dollars. And then we discount it a little bit. We do. I'll be honest with you. If we send some of these cars to the auction, we probably get a little bit more money. But you know what? I'll sell it to my sister store for $1,000 less than I get at the auction, so they can sell it to a retail customer, grab that dealer fee, grab that service fixed ops bill, grab that customer. It's going to work out more beneficially for the company as a whole. Now, I'll be honest, there was some pushback from some of the general managers in Florida, and rightfully so, right? They're looking at it as, hey, I could get $1,000 more per car if I just send it to the auction. So I had to politely tell them, yeah, unfortunately, your responsibility is the store you run. My responsibility is Rick Case Automotive Group. I got to do what's best for the entire organization, and that was the right thing to do. It really was.
It sounds like
we did something similar with Lithia when I was at Lithia as well. We did a private marketplace internal sale, to kind of feed our own stores. It makes the most sense. Why are we feeding our competitors some really nice retail pieces? So.
Understood. Now, I understand also, Tim, that as of the beginning of this year, all the stores on the used side are using vAuto's ProfitTime GPS system.
Yeah, they are.
That wasn't the case necessarily when you started, if I understand.
No, when I started, there was only maybe a couple of stores, 2 or 3, although prior to me joining, the organization did agree to sign up all the stores in ProfitTime.
Okay.
There was some, again, pushback in that rollout. We know in this industry, anytime you introduce a new tool, that's something new. Somebody's going to have to learn. There's always some kind of pushback. People don't like change, until they see it work, until we can prove to them that it's going to be useful. They don't like to change things. So I guess initially they launched it in a few stores, kind of my philosophy, where I picked one store to kind of keep more cars for retail. And then from there, as they saw stores being able to sell more cars and make more gross, hey, how's that for something, right? You don't hear that a lot in the car business. We always said you can't sell volume and make gross, but Dale figured out a way how to make that happen. So once they started seeing that, we started slowly seeing them raise their hand. Hey, I'm ready for ProfitTime. I'm ready for ProfitTime. So we rolled it out in Florida first. Which we do with a lot of things, just because we're there. All the corporate support is there in Florida. So if there's any issues, it's a lot easier for us to get there and work with them to work out any kinks. So we always do roll out Florida first. And then once we rolled out all of Florida, which finalized probably close to the end of the year, and then January hit and we were able to roll it out into our stores in Georgia. And, it's awesome. They love it. They've adopted to it. They utilize it. They learn from it. This is the thing I love the most about ProfitTime is I look at it more as an educational tool. It's an educational tool for me. It educates me on the market. It educates me on, we used to, right? Dale's philosophy was always, right? We price cars by age.
Yep.
Right. Always by age. And it's no different now. We still need to look at age. But what ProfitTime has done now with these buckets, right, these metallic buckets, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, is now I can break that down a little further, right? The data tells me, hey, bronze cars can't keep those 60 days anymore, or 50 days, or 40 days. I might have to get rid of them in 30 or even 20. Yep. And the greatest thing about ProfitTime is on that dashboard, it kind of, if you monitor it, it tells you. I can go into a store and it tells me, hey, average days in stock of the car and average days to sell in that bucket, right? Figure out where that average days to sell and average days in stock comes out to a zero profit. Once you know that, and in most of our stores, it's somewhere between day 25 and day 30. Hey, now we know bronze cars, they need to go by day 30. You cannot keep those cars 40 or 50 or 60 days. We have a 60-day aging policy, right? So we know bronze cars, you want to minimize your loss, or you want to make money on them, you got to get rid of them before 30 days. Yep. Prior to that, those bronze cars, if they were 10 days old, were priced at 100% of market. You're not selling a bronze car at 100% of market. You're not selling it. You know, if you are, it's 5% of them. It's a really low number. You got to be aggressive with bronze. You know, and it's hard. It's hard to get them to adopt, you know, to price a 3-day-old unit at 94% to market. But the reality is, if you do it on day 3 at 94%, you might make $200 or $300 on the front end of that car. Or what are you going to do? You're going to wait until day 30, and you can't even price at 94%. You got to price at 88%, or you know, it's just and you're losing $300 or $400. So, you know, on the flip side, we used to want to give away platinums at 40 days. Right? Oh, it's getting to the point where it ain't going to make money. Let's give it away. And now the data's telling me, hey, hold on. Don't drop the price yet. There's a buyer out there, and he's going to be patient with it. So, you know, it's an educational tool for me. It really is. It's great. But you got to, like any tool in our industry, you have to use it. You got to utilize it.
How did you get the you make a good point about using the tool. But there's also another point in there, Tim, about trusting the data. And what would you say is the approach you've used to get that trust happening with your team?
Yeah, again, it's that trial and error effect, right? Give it a try on 5 cars or 10 cars. Just pick a few of them, right? And do an A/B testing. So I'm a big A/B testing kind of guy. Yep. I have some digital marketing experience. Not that I kind of taught myself over the years, you know, starting back in the mid 2000s when I saw digital marketing was going to be, you know, the way of the future of marketing in our business. And for me, I always like the A/B test. So for me, it's always do an A/B test. Pick a group of cars, right? Take 5 cars, price them at 94% from day 1. Take 5 cars, do it your way. See which ones work out better. And the majority of the time, the data wins. The data always wins. Now, listen, are there those outliers? Of course there are. If you listen to Dale speak, he'll tell you he doesn't want you 100% aligned with the profit time recommendations. Get to 70 or 80. It's a great number to be at, right? Sometimes the data can't look into certain things that we can see with our own eyes. We still need to be, you know, car people, right? Profit time isn't taking into consideration 3 Carfax accidents. It doesn't know. It can't read it. It cannot read the Carfax, right? I wish we can get to the point where it can, but it can't. It can't take into consideration sometimes that awkward color that an OEM decided to come out with one day that nobody likes. You know, and listen, color, it's all about personal preference, right? I always use the example of the Hyundai Nero in fluorescent yellow, or, you know, that they have. I look at it, I'm like, I don't know anybody who would buy that car. But yet every time I go back to the store, the car's gone. Somebody bought it. But profit time doesn't take those things into consideration. So you still need to use your gut and your instincts and your knowledge of being a used car manager or a sales manager, and understanding your market, knowing the Carfaxes. Like in Florida, it's really hard to sell cars with Carfax accidents, although 80% of them have them. Because driving in Florida is a little difficult. But in Georgia, I could sell a used car with 4 Carfax accidents. People don't care as much. So understand your market. You know, that's one of the things with transferring cars from Florida to Georgia. It's a great thing because we got some cars that we can, you know, sell up here, and it's just not as important for a Carfax accident in Georgia as it is in Florida. So for me, it's testing, right? Just take a small. If you have people that don't want to adopt to what you're trying to get them to do, or lead them in that direction, you know, do a small test. Just tell them to take a handful of cars, and they'll see the results. Once they see the results, they buy in, right? What's in it for me? Well, what's in it for them is money in their pocket. That's what everybody's in the business for. And if you can show them that there's a positive ROI, they're going to buy in. They're going to buy in.
Do you have an alignment target for the manager level people at your rooftops that you like to see? Is it that 70-80% with the pricing inside?
Yeah. We like to be where Dale recommends. We're there. We as a group, we fluctuate, you know, like anybody would month to month, but we're sometimes even as high as 85% in alignment. But I'm going to tell you that, you know, that 15 or 20 or even sometimes 30% were misaligned. You know, not all of that is for the reasons I just mentioned, the Carfaxes and you still have those guys that are just, they mentally can't price a car for what they really should, because they're, you know, let's call it, it's a pay plan issue in my mind. Let's go there. Okay. pay plans dictate behavior.
Yes.
And in this industry as a whole, we generally pay our managers on gross profit.
Yes.
And a lot of times we don't, we pack things and we don't want to pay on packs and we don't want to pay on dealer fees. And next thing you know, some I've worked for some people that have very high packs and very high dealer fees. And when I'll use the example of loaner cars. All right. Loaner cars, we know that the OEMs do not have favorable programs to us for loaner cars. They don't give you a good subsidy. We got to write the cars down. We don't want to write them down too much. That hits the expense line. And when they come out, we're upside down in them 95% of the time. Sometimes it's $3 or $4 grand. They come and they hit it used car inventory. And let's just say we own that car for 30, but the market value is 27. The retail market value is 27. Well, if you're paying me just on gross profit, it's going to be really hard for me to price that car on day one, losing $3,000.
Right.
So what do? I say, I'm going to price it for 29 because I'm going to find the one guy or gal that's going to see that car and really love it. Well, that customer don't exist anymore. He's not just walking on your lot. He's looking at cars online. And when you're priced $2 grand over the market, he's not even clicking on it to get to your website. You're not finding that individual. Yeah. And that car winds up sitting for another 30 or even 60 days. And now instead of being $3 grand upside down, you're 5 or 6. It finds its way to the wholesale mark. And for some reason in this industry, we don't really care what wholesale does. I mean, a lot of us don't. We look at we made 10 grand, we lost 20 grand, and we just kind of blow it up, right? We blow it off. We focus on the retail number. So it's like, it's kind of like, I want to forget about it. Let me just wholesale it, right? Because we look at that one big number at the end of the month. So I think part of it is a little bit of a pay plan issue, but getting them to what I'm seeing is anytime we're misaligned, my point to this whole story is it's in bronze, we're priced too high, and it's in platinum, we're priced too low.
Yeah.
And to me, it's all about the mindset, right? We're looking at platinum and we see the average markup $4,000. Well, hell, I don't need to be greedy and make $4,000. Let me get aggressive and sell them quick, right? Bronze, you're seeing, all right, we're priced too high and we're negative 300 a car. We should be negative 700 at this point because they're aged units and they mentally can't do it. So the misalignment you usually see is price too high in bronze, price too low in platinum. The problem we have is, 60% of our inventory is bronze, not platinum, right?
Yeah. You can't really change that. You can't.
So for me, my philosophy and what I teach my team is you got to think of bronze. That's your volume. There's your volume cars. Just like new cars, right? We're great new car retailers. We went through the numbers. We're leaders nationally in most of our brands. Think of those bronze cars as new cars. What do we do with new cars, man? We take every deal we can. We make money on some, we lose money on some, but we make every deal we can. That's how you got to look at bronze cars. Platinum cars, there's your profit. There's your gross profit. Now, don't get me wrong. Selling bronze at volume, you'll make gross profit. But it's in that velocity model that Dale always preached, right? The more you sell, the more you're going to make. And that works. It makes sense, right? More dealer fees, again, more customers. Yep. Overall, it makes you more money. But, for some reason, again, there's things we do in this industry that's mind-boggling to me. We focus on PVR. We don't get paid on PVR. Nobody pays you on your front profit average. They pay you on a pool of gross at the end.
Right.
Right? So maximize that. Don't focus on your PVR. Focus on your ultimate goal, which is gross profit as a whole, because that's what you get paid on. So, bronze, volume, platinum, profit, and then you can go gold and silver's a little mix, right? A little more profit in gold, a little more volume in silver, but you can make a little more money there. So that's really the philosophy I kind of preach to the team.
Two final questions, Tim. As you mentioned that, volume and gross has gone up. How much? How would you quantify the gains there, would you say?
All right, so gross has gone up just with the sheer increase of volume. Our PVR on used has not gone up, but it really hasn't gone down. Okay. It's kind of stabilized. So, and that varies store to store. I'm talking as a company as a whole. But since the full adoption of ProfitTime, so I'm going to start in January, right? Because there was a learning curve. There was me being introduced to the stores for the first 6 months. I started late June last year with the organization. January, February, we were up 10% in used car volume.
Okay.
March, 35%. April, 25%, May, 30%, and June right now, we're tracking 40% increase in used car volume.
And that's year over year or month?
Year over year. That is year over year.
Yep.
That is year over year. So we're seeing some really, really nice increases. March, April, May, 3 record months for the organization for total retail used cars sold. June, we're tracking again another record month. And all the while, new car volume has not changed. It's still doing really, really well. So we're happy as an organization. Used car volume has picked up, has not affected new car volume. Again, for a lot of our stores, new car volume is actually good. Few franchises a little down, but nothing to be concerned about. So yeah, it's been great. And of course, as the stores see the results, they buy in more and more and more, and there's a bigger focus on it. So it's been really good. It's been really, really good.
I'm glad to hear that, Tim, and I appreciate you sharing your story. As we're chatting right now, it's the midpoint of June. So you've got, 5.5 months, 6 months-ish ahead. What are your priorities going to be as you look toward the end of the year and work through the summer and into the fall?
Yeah, so for me, it's that focus on those 2 buckets that we find misaligned most often, that bronze and platinum. Mm-hmm. It's difficult. It's really hard for me to get them to price these cars. I say for a loss because we're waiting too long to retail them. The reality is it's pricing them aggressive from day one. Yeah. Right? You just gotta bite the bullet. Don't look to make a lot of money on those cars. Look to make 100, 200. I'll be honest with you, I'll be happy if we break even on those cars, right? Just make that back end money, get that dealer fee, earn a customer, hopefully, and a lot of those cars, right? There are CPO cars, there are late models cars. Those are the cars that are bronze because there's high market day supplies. Those are the cars that flood our markets. Right. So these are the cars that are going to attract those new car buyers for that next car. Right? What you look at a platinum bucket, most of them are 5, 6-year-old cars, 70, 80,000 miles. There's not a lot of them out there on the road. Although I think we're going to start seeing that because people have been holding on to their cars a lot longer. Yep. I think we're going to see a shift there, which is good. I think that's good for the used car market. I think it's good for the new car market because people are going to start needing some newer cars because they're holding on to cars a long time. So my focus is really just keep refining it, right? Keep utilizing that tool, grabbing a lot of data. It's tough, right? We as managers of in this industry, we don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of reports that all of our tools have, and we look at maybe 1 or 2 per tool, even though there's 30 or 40 or 50. So for me, it's education. I'm always wanting to learn, and I'm always wanting to teach. So the focus for me is educating, right? How can we refine our processes? How can we get better in pricing our cars to move them a little quicker, to get more volume and get more gross? That's what I'm trying to teach them is move those bronze quicker. You'll actually make more gross on those cars. Your front end profit will go up. It will. Yep. So that's really the main focus for me as far as working with the stores. Personally, or at my level, I'm working with Mark, our COO, on how we can maybe get some pay plan changes implemented to kind of change the mindset a little bit. Because it really is hard to change somebody's mindset if the pay plan doesn't align. You have to align the pay plans for what your goals are. And if you can do that, you'll see some growth. You'll see some real movement, and you'll be very, very successful.
Tim, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your perspective and practical pointers. I have a feeling some of your pay plan ideas will get picked up by the folks listening in.
Listen, I hope so, and anybody can reach out to me. It's easy to find me, LinkedIn and all the social media sites. They can reach out and let me know how that goes for them. And if they want to share ideas, like I said, I'm a student. I learn every day. I learn from everybody that I work with, all my team members. I learn from people like you in the industry. So anybody has any suggestions they want to throw at me, I'm all ears. Anything that can get our stores to perform better, I'm in.
Awesome. Tim, thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks, Lance. My pleasure.
And for all you listening in and watching, thank you for joining this edition of the vAuto podcast. Until next time, stay well.